Welcome to Networking RX, a podcast devoted to helping business professionals like you enhance your networking skills in order to become more proficient giving and receiving quality business referrals and improving the overall quality of your life and the lives of those around you. The Networking RX podcast is a production of AmSpirit Business Connections, an organization whose mission is to empower business success through networking.
Welcome to the Networking RX podcast. I'm your host, Frank Agan, founder and president of AmSpirit Business Connections. Today we have another great guest on. As our subscribers know, our ongoing subscribers, often on this podcast, I will share ideas, insights, and best practices for building professional relationships and in excelling at business networking. Occasionally, however, I'll be interviewing subject matter experts, authors, speakers, thought leaders, social scientists, and our guest today is everything. I don't think she's a social scientist, but she's pretty much everything else. And they're going to share, these people share about building relationships and understanding why humans interact the way they do. So today I have on the program Julie Brown, and she is a sought-after speaker, networking expert, business strategist, and she's the author of the book, This Shit Works, a no-nonsense guide to networking your way to more friends, more adventures, and more success. And she's also the host of the podcast, This Shit Works. I'm not making any of this up. And she'll tell you, as a child of the 80s, she desperately wanted to grow up and be part of Glow. If you're familiar. If not, I'll tell you, the gorgeous women of wrestling. And obviously that dream did not work out for her. Probably your parents are really happy about this, right? But she brings energy. She was referred to me, and I was forewarned that she brought energy. But she helps countless people, has helped countless people transform their careers through networking. And thought leadership and advocacy. That's easy for me to say. Julie, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me. All that shit is true. Every single bit of it.
Well, I want to kick this right off because I've got your book in front of me. This Shit Works. And how do you conference like a badass?
Yeah, so conferencing is a big part of my business development strategy. It has been my entire career, and it is a strategy that I hope all of my clients take on as well. Like anything you want to be successful at, if you want to conference like a badass, you have to have a plan. Most people don't. The reason people fail at aren't as successful at networking as they should be is they think of it as this like amorphous idea. Like you just go into a room and you hope you meet somebody. And networking, like anything else that is important to you, you have to have a strategy around it. You have to have a plan around it, and you have to have goals for it. So as far as conferencing goes, the conference is probably going to be 2-3 days?
Sure.
And people just go to the conference for those 2 or 3 days and don't realize there's so much work they can do in advance of a conference. So for example, I'm going to an in-person conference in July. It'll be my first in-person conference since COVID happened. And I've already started to connect with people on the conference Instagram page, on the conference Facebook page, and in my local chapters asking who is going to the conference. So I can do all of this pre-conference networking. Now it's not till July. So I'm doing this. I always say it's the 3 months before a conference, it's the conference, and then it's a follow-up after the conference. So I'm 3 months before the conference, and I'm already doing all of this connecting and getting to know who's going to be there and who the speakers are. And how I can really have meaningful connections with people prior to going to the conference so that when we meet for the first time at the conference, it feels like we're old friends. Like doing that amount of pre-work before a conference, any conference. And then while you're at the conference, like being fully present, like don't go to the when you go to a conference, say, I'm going to be there from stem to stern. I'm going to get up and I'm going to go to the events in the morning. I'm going to be present while I'm there. I'm not going to be on my phone. I'm not going to be doing other work. I'm not going to bring my laptop into the sessions. I'm going to go to all the social things that are available to me. You will probably get invited to dinners or cocktail parties. Go to them. Like be fully present in the 2 or 3 days that you're there. And then We all know that 80% of building relationships is just following up with people, and people suck at follow up. So if you have a plan for following up with all of the people that you met at the conference, that's a surefire way to blow your competition away, because people will meet somebody and then they won't do anything with that connection. And then it turns into a lost lead, a lost relationship. So what can you do after the conference to really say, I'm going to get my money's worth out of this? I'm going to do the 3 months before, I'm going to be there, I'm going to be present during the conference. And then afterwards, I have a plan for following up and fostering relationships with these people that I've met at the conference. Conferences are a big investment. They usually are, multiple thousands of dollars by the time you pay for airfare and hotel and registration. You really need to work to get your money's worth out of that investment.
No, I think that's a great point. Well, all those points, there were a lot of points there. When I go to conferences and talk to people about going to conferences, a lot of they look at it as a junket. Right. Mm-hmm. Hey, this is great. I'm out of the office. Yeah. And there's select people that they're going to hang with, usually people from the office, and they miss the whole opportunity. Let's back up here real quick. And I hit you with that because that's one of the titles of one of her chapters in her book, This Shit Works. I guess tell us about you, how you got started into this. I mean, nobody goes off to college and says, I'm going to be a networking expert.
Yeah. So I wish they did. I actually recently just taught a lecture. I live in Boston at one of the local universities here for one of their professional practices, had me come in and give a lesson as part of the professional practice, all on networking and how to get work and build relationships. So schools are seeing the value of it. But it's not, nobody graduates with their degree and then a minor in networking. So, I kind of fell in it the way a lot of people fall into careers that aren't fully formed, as far as you don't go to school to be a networking and business development strategist. You can go to business school, but you don't go to networking school. So I had a job where I was working in the marketing department, and part of my job was to get involved with local organizations, which I had a boss who said, part of your job is, there was this local organization for marketers within the architecture industry, which was what I was in. And she said, it's part of your job to become involved with this organization. And by getting involved, I mean, you have to sit on a committee and you have to eventually sit on the board. That was part of my job. And that really changed my career. I suddenly had a peer group of all of these people who were doing the same job as me. I had a peer group. I could go to them for answers, for commiseration. Sure. And I became known in the industry through this organization. And that sort of planted the seed on, it's more than just doing your job. Like being really good at your job is just sort of like a barrier to entry of being really good in your career. What really changes the scope of your career is the people that you know. So that's when that seed was planted. And then as I, grew up in my career, the firms that I was working for understood how many people I already knew in the industry and started placing me as a business development strategist, a lead generation strategist, and out of marketing, sort of like internal working versus external working. So that's how that really happened. And then I've been doing this for 22 years. So it was probably around like 15 years into my career was when people started saying, oh, Julie knows everybody. If you need to know anybody, go to Julie. If you need to know any information about the market, go to Julie because she knows everybody. That was when my strategy changed from being an internal business developer into thinking about going out on my own as a consultant and a speaker. And so I've been doing that for 6 years now, just shy of 6 years, having my own firm.
Interesting. Yeah. As you're speaking, a number of thoughts are kind of going through my mind, and I can see the transition from, just being that person who, I got to do this, to, hey, there's something to this and this really works. Mm-hmm. When people start throwing your name out there, hey, she knows everybody, it kind of becomes self-sustaining, doesn't it? Because then you're not hunting people down, they're coming after you.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I mean, part of my strategy around networking is also a strategy around personal branding and having control of my own reputation and my own personal brand. And part of that is constant, and just like yourself, constantly being a place where people can come to for information. So you have a podcast and I have a podcast and I wrote the book. And so once everybody started thinking I was an expert at networking, I was like, you know what? I am an expert. I'm gonna write a fucking book, like, and that was like everybody saying how great I was at networking and business development. Really, it fostered my own confidence to be able to go out on my own and write the book and be this place where people could come to for information.
Well, I think what ends up happening, I see this happening with me, is you develop a level of expertise, but it becomes so second nature that you just assume it's second nature for everybody.
I don't assume that anymore. And because of my professional speaking career, I know that some of the things that come to me quite naturally, and they come to me naturally because I've been doing them for 22 years. It wasn't like they were natural all of the time. I didn't know I've grown in my career. Some of the things that I now think come, that come naturally to me now really need to still be taught to people who are just getting out of college or are emerging leaders in their firms. So one thing I learned on my speaking circuit is the questions that I get at the end of my speech really help me understand with what people are struggling with networking right now. Because things that I maybe haven't struggled for 15 or 16 years, somebody else is struggling with now. And I'm like, oh yeah, I can answer that question. So I love the question and answer part of being a professional speaker, because I really do. It helps me understand how I can best serve people through information on the podcast or maybe writing another book or whatever. Their questions give me topic ideas to write about to help them.
Oh, that's a good point. Why do you think, well, this is my own opinion, I think colleges and universities do a horrible job preparing people. They prepare them in every other way. Mm-hmm. They're great architects, they're great doctors, they're great economists, whatever.
Yeah.
Horrible.
Yep.
At networking relationships.
I agree. What? Well, it's because we have it's societally, you go to school to get some good at your trade, whatever that is, at the thing that you are going to do for a living. And that's where all of the emphasis is put on. It's not put on the social aspects of being an entrepreneur or being in an office and working with a team and working with different personalities. Everything is so focused on just the one thing that you're studying that we miss the fact that we're human beings. We're 360-degree individuals. And what we do, however much we love it, and that's our passion, it actually is only a little piece of who we are. So we actually are going to connect with other people. If you think about it as a surface area of connecting with people, because you have something in common with somebody or you work in the same office as them, that's just a small piece of the surface area with which you can connect with people. So yeah, it's a disservice by not saying we have to be really good at our job, but you know what? There's no dummies here. Like if you're an architect, I'm married to an architect. If you're an architect, I know what you went through to go through 5 years of undergrad architectural practice. I know what you had to go through to get your AREs or your LEED exam or your WELLs. Like there are no dummies here. So how are you going to stand out when everybody else is really, really good at their job? How you're going to stand out is being able to build a network and have relationships and people invested in your success and helping guide the way for you to greater success. Like that's what's going to help you stand apart, not because you're just as good as the architect sitting next to you.
Yeah. Someone once said to me, hard things are easy, soft things are hard.
Yep.
Meaning, learning architecture, and I took classes in high school. That's it. So I'm not even gonna pretend. But you know what? Yeah, I would imagine it's like any other technical profession. There is just a lot of moving parts, but in a way, it's easy because there are boxes to check. The soft things, the soft skills, the networking, the building relationships, there aren't really boxes to check because every situation is different.
Well, So there are no boxes to check. There's no like, okay, I did this, then this, then this, then this, then this, and then I got a project with that person or that person referred me. There is no sort of, it's a relationship. So you have to think about, am I going into this relationship with integrity and trust and honesty? And how can I move my relationship forward? What are the things I can do to move my relationship forward? And that is being really great at follow-up, being interested in the other person and learning enough about that other person where you can say, hey, I saw this article and it made me think of you. Hey, I heard this song and it made me think of you. Always having reasons to check back in, always being there to offer assistance if they need it. Say, hey, I might not be able to help you. Let me know if you ever need anything, and being honest about that. Like, so yeah, there's no like checklist of things that you have to do to make sure that you get a lead, but there are things that you can say, how can I be a really good contact? How can I be a really good part of this person's network and go from there? There's a lot of different ways to build relationships.
No, I totally agree. I think the difference is that when people are in college learning, it's a 10-week course or a 15 weeks course, and you kind of know, here's the syllabus, this is what's expected. And at the end of this is what you can expect. With relationships, everyone is different. So you never really know. And some you have to invest a ton of time. Some it's just as easy as connecting with them before the conference. And
I write about this in my book a little bit where, how long does it take? Because people ask me all the time, like, when can I ask? When do I get to the point where I can ask for business or ask for a referral or whatever? And there's some statistics behind this that it will take 80% of the people you meet. You'll have to have 4 interactions with somebody before they decide whether or not you would be a person that they would do business with or refer business to. And I think about it as like a garden, and I've just planted my garden. 3 weeks ago, I planted my garden here in the Northeast, and I plant everything at the same time. So the radishes go in at the same time. The spinach goes in at the same time. The eggplant, the tomatoes, they all go in at the same time. But you know what? My radishes are already ready to eat, and my tomato plant still is like, the listeners can't see. It's this tiny. It's a tiny little thing. I don't go out to the tomato plant and say, you piece of shit tomato, like my radishes are already giving me food and you're just sitting here and you're not going to give me any food until August. So you piece of shit tomato. Like that's the tomato is going to grow at the pace with which it was made to grow. And I treat the tomato the same way I treat the radish, even though the radish is going to feed me quicker. And so you have to think about your relationships like that. You have to not keep score. You have to be building this relationship because you want to, and because you're doing it authentically. And when it is ready to bear fruit, it will, but you cannot bully somebody into working with you before they are ready.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. Let's circle back to our conversation earlier. You had said when you worked for this firm that it was part of your job to become involved with these organizations, and that involvement meant sitting on a committee and then ultimately serving on the board.
Right.
When you coach somebody about going to conferences, getting back to conferences, do you have benchmarks like that too? Are there measures that you tell these people, listen, you're going to go to this conference. These are the types of things you need to try and do. Have lunch with these people or.
Yeah. Everybody is different. Everybody's level of comfort is different going to a conference and being in a room full of people, especially now, with getting back to in person, everybody's level of comfort with shaking hands and being close to people is going to be different. I just want that conference to be worth the investment that person put into it or that company put into it. And that's why I'm so adamant about making sure that you do legwork ahead of time. So you've got that 2 or 3 months of doing legwork ahead of time so that when you get there, you have a more relaxed experience. I do tell people, and I write about it in the book, is if you know somebody else who is going to that conference, like try to go together. We are creatures. We like our creature comforts. We like social connection. So if you can go to a conference with someone that helps you feel more confident walking into a room because you're walking in with someone else, or that person can make introductions for you. I write about this woman in my book who I was coaching her through going to her first conference, and she did not want to travel with the other people like from Boston that were going, but she reached out to a friend who she thought might be going. And he said, yeah, I would love to travel together. However, I actually am already traveling with these two other women. Would you want to join us? And this is when she was like, nope, I'm introverted. I don't want to do that. But she remembered what I said. And she took that car. It was only a car ride. It wasn't a plane ride. She took that, 2-hour car ride with this one gentleman that she knew and these two women that she didn't know. And they talked a little bit about work and what they did and why they were going to the conference. And within 3 or 4 months, one of the women that was in the car called her and said, I think you do what I need. And it has led to, I think, 5 clients for her because she sits on nonprofit boards. So it has led to like her working with like 5 of her clients. And she said to me, if I'd never gotten in that car, I would have missed out on these 5 clients. So I want it to be successful for you and in your comfort zone, but I don't want you to be limited by your comfort zone. I want you to push it a little bit. I want you to be prepared and push it a little bit. And say, what do I want to get away from this? Do I want to meet 5 new people that I can follow up with? Is there one specific person I want to talk to? Am I just going to learn about something? Is this for me to, for business, for me to learn something about my business, get my credits? A lot of people need CEUs, continuing education units. Like, what do you want to get out of it? And then make sure you're doing enough to fulfill your goals for that conference.
All right, let's shift gears here and let's talk about you. Let's talk about your business, how people can help, the types of work that you do.
So my business is a little twofold. So I work with organizations, companies to help them understand where their work is coming from. So a lot of organizations work without a database of historical data, and they don't know where all of their leads came from. So I will work with organizations to say, okay, let's do an analysis of all of the projects that we've had over the years and where they came from. So we can really begin to understand who is our referral base, where is our work coming from, and how we can replicate that. So that's one of the ways I work with people. Or companies. Another thing that I do is I work with companies on trying to figure out how they're going to penetrate new targets. So they have a list of targets and they haven't had any luck getting in with those targets. I work with them to mine the data around all of their existing relationships to find out how many points of entry we have to actually get into those specific targets. So I like doing that a lot. The other part of my business, as I mentioned before, is the professional speaking. So I get hired by conferences to do keynotes or companies to speak at their offsites or sales rallies or retreats, just to talk about networking and business development and get their employees to get a better understanding of networking and business development and how they can begin to build their own network. To have other people invested in their success and build like sort of a community around their business.
I'm going to put your website, juliebrownbd.com, in the show notes.
Yep.
What's BD stand for?
Business development.
All right.
So Julie Brown is a pretty common name. There was 2 MTV VJs in the 90s. One was Downtown Julie Brown that I still get all the time. People ask me every week doesn't go by that somebody doesn't say Downtown Julie Brown. So Julie Brown .com was taken years ago.
Well, with a book that's called This Shit Works, I was hesitant to ask what BD stand for. But anyhow,
I could come
I had no idea.
Other meanings.
Is there another way for people to get a hold of you, or just through the website best?
I'm happy for people to just have my email. So my email is julie@juliebrownbd.com. If they're on Instagram, I'm juliebrown_BD. Those are the two main ways to get in touch with me: email, my website, and the third way would be Instagram.
I can't believe you didn't work Glow in there somewhere.
Oh my God, the gorgeous ladies of wrestling. I got to tell you, I was enamored with them when I was little. I mean, I was a little kid. And I remember saying that I was going to become a professional wrestler when I was older.
Okay. Can only imagine what your parents thought. Hey, I really appreciate you being on the program today.
Yeah, I mean, this was so fun. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for joining us on the Networking RX podcast. Please put what you've learned into action today and let us know if you have questions, comments, or ideas for future topics. You can email them to us at podcast@amspirit.com. That's AmSpirit.com. Finally, so you never miss an episode, be sure to subscribe to the Networking RX podcast through iTunes, Overcast, or however you receive your podcasts. Now get out and network with someone.
The Networking RX podcast is the copyright production of AmSpirit Business Connection. All rights reserved.